both here as well as online. And just a reminder to everybody that the meeting this evening is being recorded. And just a reminder as well that when you are speaking, just to hit the button on the microphone so that we can hear what you're saying. It can be picked up by the recording and for the people that are online. So we are going to begin. I'm going to call the meeting officially to order. So we will start with our opening prayer and our land acknowledgement. So if you will join me in a sign of our faith for our opening prayer, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Fulton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
So honor and respect.
4 directions. Lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thanks very much. So moving on to item number 1.2 is the approval of the agenda. Everybody will have received a copy of the agenda in their meeting package. Was there any questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. If I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. So Trish and Rick. Okay, so moved by Trish and seconded by Rick. Thank you very much. Item number 2, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations this evening? No? Okay, great. So moving right on to item number 3, which is our presentation. We have one presentation this evening. So I'd like to welcome Andrew Cordero here. Andrew is an ICERT with our co-op program. And Andrew is going to be presenting on ministry projects overview. So welcome to SEAC.
Okay. And so you may remember me from some other presentations that I've done in the past, and hopefully you can see the progression here. A couple of years ago, I presented on pathways, and I primarily dealt with some of the transition supports and pathway supports we have for students in secondary. Then I presented about some of the work that we did with our VR project, which was supporting co-op, so life skills co-op through point of view video and virtual reality. And then this is kind of like the culmination or putting together those two things, which is really talking to you about the ministry project and how we're taking some of what we've learned in the past and also some of the tools that we've acquired in the past to hopefully support students as we move forward going into cooperative education. So if you could change the slide, please. So just to start off, I always like to start off with a quote from Jesus just to kind of get us in the right mindset. And I thought that really to speak about these ministry projects, what we're really talking about is collaboration. So I think Jesus really captured the spirit of collaboration here when he said, "Lend without expecting to be paid back, then you will get a great reward, and you will be the true children of God in heaven." And I like this image as well and inserted it here because depending on the context, you could think of, again, those two people there, one's being assisted up the hill. You could think of it as the teacher assisting the student getting up the hill, and also you could think of it as, teachers assisting teachers. And really that's what we're trying to do in collaboration with our co-op teachers, as well as obviously our spec ed departments and our guidance departments as well in our high schools. Next slide, please. So, and if you could click that, I kind of give you a summary of what these two projects are really about, and kind of look for commonalities between the two, and kind of put it into my own words by saying these projects are primarily focused on developing supports for students with exceptionalities in cooperative education, and to remove barriers by building capacity and developing student voice in pathways planning. And it really talks to some of the work that we did last year. Last year I was in the role of Special Education Transition Pathways Itinerant Cert, a very long title. So essentially what I was doing is supporting with regards to pathways planning, predominantly in the life skills program. So we developed a lot of transition tools like visual and also kind of with voice recordings incorporated into kind of a PowerPoint that we use as a workbook in terms of providing students with an opportunity in our life skills program to give us an idea of what work needed to have in order for it to be interesting and meaningful for them. We also created 65 different job posters last year as well that matched up to some of the icons in the interest inventory, again, recreating the experience that students have on My Blueprint, looking to take student voice and then matching that student voice to some of the job opportunities through entry-level jobs, again, giving people an idea of what students are interested in and what they could help them kind of explore further, either through co-op or in transition planning for post-21. So next slide, please. And so essentially these two are looking at co-op, and you may ask yourself, why co-op? Next, or just if you could click again, please. Because it's real world hands-on learning. And as a special education teacher, that's like the land, I can't put it any better, it's like the land of milk and honey in terms of like when we look at the students that we serve, hands-on learning is what we're looking for. And so previously, before becoming an iCert, I had the opportunity of being a cert at St. Thomas Aquinas, and I was teaching the GLE program there. And essentially what we looked at when I had the students in my classroom was thinking, okay, how can I use this technology to help students kind of navigate the different paper and pencil tasks that they're going to be seeing in their high school career, and really like hoping that somewhere along the line we're incorporating that hands-on learning, right? That experiential learning. And that's what co-op is all about. So I think that's really why we're focusing on co-op, because it really speaks to the learning profile of many of the students that we serve. Next slide, please. So this is a song by Sting. The consultant that I work with, Lisa Vaca, we work on kind of the A4, that life skills or community pathways portfolio. She kind of made reference to this video a couple of years ago, and it really does sum up, I think, and provide you with a nice visual of what we're trying to do with these two ministry initiatives.
The baker had Simone, and everybody saw that she could do the job. The lawyer went to the baker and saw Simone at work. The lawyer hired John because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The dentist went to the lawyer and saw John at work. The dentist hired Sophia because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The farmer went to the dentist and saw Sophia at work. The farmer hired Kate because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The farmer went to the farmer and saw Kate at work. The farmer hired Paul because the farmer hired Kate, because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The baker went to the barber and saw Paul at work. He didn't have a clue, but it was thanks to his first move that the barber hired Paul because the farmer hired Kate, because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone, the baker hired Simone, the baker hired Simone. Yeah, yeah.
If sometime like around 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, you find yourself singing you're welcome. So really, I just want to talk to you about, so through this ministry initiatives, or these two ministry initiatives, what we're able to do is to have the position of co-op ICER, right? And I just wanted to explain to you what the co-op ICER role really is looking at doing. So we're looking to collaborate and support teachers in making cooperative education, really refining cooperative education, making it accessible to neurodiverse learners, to help students access and gain important work experience, to provide an opportunity for students with exceptionalities to demonstrate how capable they can be, to assist neurodiverse students in finding meaningful employment, and to build system-wide capacity to nurture the strengths of neurodiverse learners. So again, it's for all exceptionalities. It's not just, or all programs. It's not just students in life skills program or students in a GLE program. It's for all students. Next slide, please. So it's very important to us for us to build objectives for these ministry projects that were very much informed by, the students that we serve, as well as the teachers that we're collaborating with. So again, if I'm going to be a pivot point between spec ed, guidance, and co-op, who better to ask than those people for input? So we sent out a form to our spec ed departments, and we also set out a form. So I'm working with Judy Bridges, who's kind of student success lead for our board, as well as Chris Hall. And they sent out the same form to all of the co-op teachers. So we got all of that information, and really the forms we're looking at, okay, can you help us identify what the barriers are for students finding or getting into or accessing cooperative education? And so we gave them a menu list of potential barriers. Then we said, well, what should we do to overcome it? And then we gave them a menu list of possible solutions, things to overcome those things. And so we took that information to kind of put together the plan that I'm going to show you right now. So we've got our ministry. This is a little bit corny, but I kind of liked it in terms of, so like the ministry projects are kind of like the rain, right? The water over top. And then really what we're working on here is the main part, which is kind of like the trees. And each one of the projects or parts of the project that we're working on is kind of like the flowers. Those are the things that we're working on. And then how do we sustain it? Well, that's the soil part, the brown boxes, they're the soil. And that's how we sustain the work that we're doing. So again, there's a lot there. Again, it's a 3-year project. So next slide, just wanted to give you a breakdown of what we want to work on for year 1. So first off, what we wanted to do, and I presented to the secondary principals, looking at potentially getting some secondary administrators into our kind of developing a steering committee for this work. And again, you'll notice for the co-op program, I kind of like each of the little boxes there. So this first one, planning the opportunity, follows the co-op experiential learning model. So we're developing or planning the opportunity, and some of the supports that we want to put in place are, 1, developing community connections. So again, through my work in supporting our community pathways, I've been able to make some connections with our partners in community living organizations. And again, I'd like to recreate some of the supports we have for students transitioning out of our life skills program into post-21. I'd like to recreate some of the supports for other students or students with other exceptionalities. The other thing we'd like to do is to develop a co-op advisory committee or partner with the Municipal Chamber of Commerce, which is again something that we are creating at Project Search. So we have a Project Search Business Advisory Committee that I'm currently a part of, and we're kind of building that, and I'd like to see if we could recreate that, again, supporting that the pathway potentially to a workplace, or it could be a pathway to college or university. And then the next part of our cycle is preparing for the opportunity. So what we'd like to do, again, in partnership with so in our steering committee, we'd like to have life skills sets, certs, department heads, spec ed department heads, co-op teachers, kind of working together to develop a pre-placement questionnaire, because we'd like to make sure that we're asking students, again, building student voice, kind of getting an idea of what they're interested in so that they're matched up with a co-op placement that meets their interest. Then the other piece that we want to do is create a differentiated co-op pre-placement package. So that is, so students, before they go out for their community-based co-op, what they do is they go through a 2 or 3 week period where they go through things like health and safety, employee rights, safety concerns. So what we want to do is we want to work with co-op teachers to kind of refine some of the material that they have and to put together like what we like to call a differentiated co-op pre-placement package that's going to be able to speak to a variety of modalities of learning. There's two things that are exciting about that. One, obviously, we're providing students with an opportunity to access curriculum, which is very important if they're going out for a community-based co-op. The other thing too is we have the opportunity here to demonstrate to everybody what differentiated programming can look like. So we can, in partnership all together, kind of work together to develop that kind of as a symbol of what a differentiated unit or series of units can look like. The other thing we want to do is incorporate community involvement or volunteer opportunities into the GLE 1.0 and 2.0 program, as well as the Pathways unit into the GLE 3.0, 4.0. So again, in my travels, I've been able to talk to some of my colleagues that are teaching GLE, and this is something that they'd like to see happen as well. Again, with the idea that, and I'll go into this afterwards, but many of our students go into GLE program. And so what we want them to do is to start imagining learning outside. And so if we can build outside of the school, so if we can build that community involvement into the GLE program, there's a better chance or a higher likelihood that they're going to look at co-op as a possibility down the road. And then in terms of our last component, which is supporting student well-being, our student learning and well-being, when we want to kind of, we're refining some of the forms that we have, some of the co-op forms that we have, as well as kind of reviewing our sharing of information protocol. And again, that importance of developing self-advocacy. And then from a day-to-day perspective, again, case by case, the co-op ICER to collaborate with school teams. So it could be capacity building around student-specific strategies and learning profiles. So that's the idea that, hey, Andrew, we're having, you know, we have a student out in a co-op placement, seems to be struggling with the acquisition of a few skills. What can we do? Kind of thing. And then we can work together to figure that out. And then the next piece as well to supporting student learning is developing an in-school co-op program, which we have, but we want to refine. And then kind of leveraging some of the work that we've done with our point of view 360 cameras to help develop job skills. So I just wanted to highlight quickly, you may be asking yourself, why a pre-placement questionnaire? Why a differentiated co-op pre-placement package? So next slide. So I had access obviously to the IP engine, and I also had access to PowerSchool. So what I did was I looked at, and kind of working with Judy as well, she got for us information about, you know, students that were or that have an IEP that are enrolled in co-op for semester 1. So what I did is I took those names and then went into the IP engine and then kind of took a look at the identification. So because I really wanted to make sure if we're going to develop a differentiated pre-placement package, we want to make sure it's tailored to the needs of the students that we're serving. So just some of the stats, like, and we're looking at 103 students that are enrolled in co-op that have an IEP. So in terms of, so students with the identification of communication learning disability, 33% of them had that identification, and the other identifications are represented there as well. So I literally went through each one. Next slide, please. If you could click it. And then I wanted to take a look at strengths because we wanted to develop a differentiated replacement package that is tailored to the student's strengths. So if you could click on it, just highlighting, many of our students demonstrate strengths. So I looked at the IEP, like strengths and needs, right? I looked at the strengths section on each IEP, and there were 31 instances of expressive language or social communication being a strength. Another thing that we saw was that verbal comprehension and memory, 36 instances of that being a strength. And then visual memory, visual motor, visual spatial, so that visual learner, 55 instances of that being listed as a strength. Next slide. If you could click for my burst. One more time. There we go. So I looked at and wanted to kind of take a look at some of the needs. So Overall, we've had 56 instances of reading being an area of need. Click again. And then written expression, there were 38 instances of it. So now what? So essentially, based on that information, we want to develop a pre-placement package that is less dependent on reading and writing and incorporates the use of visuals and accessibility tools like text-to-speech and speech-to-text. We want to develop one that we want to develop an option for self-reflection, which is very important in co-op. Self-reflection or journaling via verbal and or visual communication. We'd like to build capacity around strategies like accessibility tools, forward and backward chaining, reinforcement, so on, and build capacity around teaching executive functioning, social skills, self-regulation, and self-advocacy skills. So again, if you think about it, we asked our co-op teachers, we asked our special education departments, what do you want us, what should we work on? We put that into the plan. Now we're looking at student strengths and needs. Now that's informing the plan as well. Okay, next slide, please. Keep going. This shouldn't have had any transition. Okay, so the next question would be, well, you probably ask yourself, you maybe ask yourself, why GLE? Next slide. So what I looked at is how many students in grade 11 have taken a GLE course. So sample size, I looked at 4 schools, 1 from each municipality, and essentially 60% of the grade 11 students have enrolled in a GLE course at some point in their high school career. So the opportunity there, click again. The opportunity there with GLE is that's our preeminent transition tool when we have students transitioning into have an IEP that are transitioning into the high school. Many of them go into our GLE 1.0, right? The grade 9 program. So what we want to do is we want to give them an opportunity for some community involvement. Again, like I said, to start seeing learning outside of the building or outside of the school, and maybe start to understand how rewarding it can be to help other people and to give them a little kickstart in terms of acquiring their community hours, right? The other thing we'd like to do is potentially, we want to develop a pathways planning unit, maybe exploring the workplace option in our GLE 3040 course. I mean, there's even some opportunities, I think, in combining that course with the co-op, putting that together, but that's something that we can explore as we move forward. But we want to kind of use that as, again, a nice transition tool for that transition to post-secondary. Next slide, please. Okay, and last question. So then you may be asking, what about in-school co-op and point of view job skills videos? Well, next slide. So in-school co-op and our POV job skills videos. So the question is, why further develop in-school co-op? Well, by further developing in-school co-op, we can strengthen our collaboration with our co-op partners and demonstrate proof of concept. So what we want to do, so we have in-school co-op, but we want to formalize the in-school co-op. And essentially what we're saying is, we want to create a partnership, again, kind of strengthen that partnership with co-op. What better place to do that, but within a building that everyone's familiar with? The idea, again, kind of looking back at the Sting video as well, is that co-op teachers will be able to start seeing, wow, look how capable these students are. Now I know more about Billy, and now I can start envisioning Billy out in the community. Now I'm, more able to partner with a life skills cert or another cert to work together to find Billy an appropriate community-based co-op. So the idea there being that we're going to partner against Spec Ed and co-op to develop in-school co-op opportunities. So the idea would be maybe, and this is something to explore, maybe in Cosmo, we could have a couple of times where students are going through a rotation, they stop in at Cosmo and they're able to set up, right? Use some of their sorting skills, set things up for a Cosmo class. Or in various other classes. So again, we would do that in partnership with our colleagues in the various departments. And then input or assess job skills based on in-school co-op opportunities into VokeFit. We're doing like a VokeFit pilot, which again is coming out of our work and project search. So what we do there is we look at the skills required for a job. We input that into the system, okay? Then we look at the skills that the student has based on the same criteria. We input that into the system. And then essentially what the system does for us is it matches the student's skills to the job. And then we're better able to ascertain if it's an area or a job where we're going to see some growth and is kind of like at their zone of proximal development So just at that point where it's comfortable, but kind of stretching them a little bit more. So it helps us kind of target jobs that way. And it helps us track their development moving forward as well. And then we'd like to develop a cooperative education planning meeting framework. Just again, supporting the co-op program, and then kind of facilitating that connection with our community partners and supporting the transition to their initial post-secondary destination. So essentially what you're seeing there, it's very interesting. What you're seeing there is essentially what we have in place, what we've built for our students in our life skills program. And so what we want to do is kind of leverage that knowledge and kind of see if we can adapt that to support students with other exceptionalities who are kind of in our co-op programs as well. So again, that in-school co-op provides an opportunity for maybe Billy's kind of doing really well. Maybe he's just maybe ready to go out for a community-based co-op, but maybe there's a couple of skills we need to refine. Maybe we do that in an in-school co-op first. Then once he's ready, he can go out and transition into a community-based co-op. So it's interesting because the adage or the old adage of, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats is very eminent or very apparent with our Project Surge program. There's a lot of what we've learned from there. We've been able to adapt, and we'll continue to adapt to serve the needs of students with other exceptionalities as well. So I try to make it as concise as I could. If there's any questions, I'm totally open to questions, maybe discussing anything further. But like I said, it is a lot of information. But ultimately, what we want to do is definitely foster that spirit of collaboration amongst all of the departments. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Jessica, go ahead.
I just have a comment. I thought it was so brilliant how you actually extracted all the strengths and the exceptionalities from the elite and actually connected to your plan here. I think that really deserves a commenting there.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't usually connect strengths, right? We usually go the other way. Trish, you had a comment or a question?
I do, both. Actually, thank you. This is excellent and nice to see all the data. See it there in numbers, like in black and white. So it's very helpful. Just could you expand on GLE? Because I know I only experienced it when we were signing up for it. Just for people who might not know, can you explain kind of what GLE is?
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. So GLE is part of the guidance and career education department, but essentially it kind of comes over to special education. So there's two parts to it. There's either the GLS program, which uses the same curriculum, but is for students who require, that transition support coming into grade 9 who do not have an IEP. And then there's the GLE program, which is for students who do have an IEP. So essentially what you're working on there is you're developing your numeracy skills, you're developing some of your real world literacy skills as well. And then you're looking at like your personal development and again, acquiring job skills or some of the soft skills required in getting a job. So that's why it kind of seems like, and again, like right now I'm kind of going through each of the curriculums and essentially we start to see a lot of connection between GLE and co-op. And so you also start to see a lot of connections with the careers program as well. So in terms of the GLE program and maybe why it's beneficial for students transitioning into high school and grade 9 is you have a special education resource teacher who is teaching the course. And very often, many of the students that I was teaching were on my caseload as well. So the benefit there was that, I understood because I taught them how they learn best, what some of their needs were. And so when I would be able to go and talk and advocate for them with their teachers, like a science teacher or math teacher, I'd be able to speak to kind of like the how they learn because I taught them. So that's kind of the benefit there. As well as, the students can take GLE from grade 9, 10, 11, 12. But essentially it made my job a lot easier as their cert because I could advocate for them and from personal knowledge of working with them. And then also to the beauty of that role in high school as well, is that as the GLE cert, when you're talking to teachers, you're also able to say, I teach a class, right? I teach a class with students with diverse learning needs. So I understand, some of the challenges and some of the things that work. So it's definitely a very beneficial program for students to be in. Definitely for that transition into grade 9, but then they can take it as they move forward. So hopefully that answered your question.
Is there other questions? I've got a couple questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
So when you were talking about one of the first slides, about one of the first pieces was identifying the barriers so that you could determine how to remove some of the barriers. What were some of the barriers that were identified?
So one of the barriers was the number one barrier was opportunity. So to speak to that in terms of opportunity, meaning like number of co-op placements available. So that's why we want to develop like a business advisory committee and connect with our community partners to be able to leverage those connections to get us more co-op placements. So like even today, we have a student that we're supporting in Christ the King, and we're looking to get her a co-op placement for semester 2. The team, we're working collectively as a group, and like they just reached out today and said, hey, mom had said that she's really interested in going into like a retirement home, a senior center. So I was able to contact the job developer that I communicate with through Project Search from Community Living North Halton and said, hey, we have a student who's really interested in a senior center or a co-op placement in the senior center. Do you have any that are available? And so she sent me like 3 different options that are available in Georgetown. So then I sent that to the team and the co-op teachers so then they can continue to look into that further. So that's the biggest barrier. The other one is transportation. Especially up in Georgetown, just because there isn't transportation, like municipal transportation, there aren't any buses. So that's a barrier as well.
And then I was just curious if anything came up about supports. Like when I think about diverse students and I think about if you're looking to include all students in this opportunity with multiple exceptionalities, we may have students who are hearing impaired, who have visual impairment, who have physical disabilities. So, in effort to ensure that they are having equal access to co-op opportunities, were some of those barriers identified about how we make that happen for those students who may want to participate?
So I think that speaks to and connects to just the availability of co-op placements. So for example, with the situation that I just referenced, the student is identified blind and low vision. So in working with the blind and low vision ICER, what we were talking about is connecting with CNIB to see if there were some partners within the Georgetown community that were, people that are businesses that they worked with in the past. So that way we could kind of tap into CNIB to help us procure that placement. Like it really is, the best part about it is it really is about tapping into your community support because together, like you're better able to meet the needs of the student and to find a placement that's appropriate and is going to provide the opportunity to find meaningful work, right? So I think in terms of talking about like removing any barriers that may be evident for us students with other exceptionalities, again, as we move forward, we learn more, right? So the key though is like as we move forward in partnership with our community partners because the relationship is so fruitful. So if you were to say like, hey, I have the specific profile, what could we do? I would number one say we need to tap into our community partners, and then I think collectively we could find an option to support that student. So I think that's key for all other exceptionalities, is tap into our community partners. Even speaking to that, like looking at other exceptionalities, like so for example, if you're looking at a communication learning disability, like or a student with a mild intellectual disability, they may require some supports that mimic some of the supports that we have in place for students who have identification of DD. So we have community living for those students. However, for the MID and maybe the LD, maybe we tap into Center for Skills. Maybe we tap into FedCap. So we're trying to build those partnerships so that way we have them at the table when we are kind of problem solving and coming up with a solution or finding an opportunity.
I was just going to say we were fortunate to be selected as one of the schools to participate. It's not offered, we don't have a position like this reflected in all of the school boards. And so I feel like we're pretty cutting edge in terms of being able to gather this information and bring it back to the ministry. And then we're hoping to augment it with the knowledge that we're gathering so that it is something that is broadly accessed by all students, whether they are, in a wheelchair, if they're blind, low vision, because we see the value, obviously, in having students of all capacities and capabilities being able to have meaningful work, meaningful opportunities. We're all going to be old and gray. We're going to rely on them to take care of us. So it's a really unique opportunity. We didn't want to miss that opportunity to strengthen those community partnerships, but also to empower all of the students that are in our care so that they can go out into the world and thrive. So.
And just maybe to add on to it, like another key component of that is student voice. So some of the tools that we've built that because they're very visual and so students are essentially answering a questionnaire that can be read to them. So like we went in, made sure that each sentence can be read to them, and then they move icons over to make their selections. That provides us with an opportunity to tap into student voice. So we can say, okay, this is Billy's job interest board. And then we have posters, like if you go into the life skills classes, there are posters. So like World of Work, there's 65 different entry-level job posters that we've developed and put in every single classroom. So that way Billy goes with his career interest board. It's got the icons. Billy's always my kind of like hypothetical student name. So just so you know, so I'm not referring to Billy in particular, but so Billy goes in and he can say, okay, well, here's my career interest board. I'm going to match the icons in my interest board to the icons at the bottom of this job poster. Oh, the more that I have in common, the more likely becoming a barista, for example, is something that I want to like pursue. That gives the teachers who are supporting that student an opportunity, number one, to take a look at some of the skills involved there, program for those skills so that they're helping Billy become a barista, for example. And Billy knows what he's working towards. So then you can say, well, when you're looking for further placements out in the community, we know that now because we have student voice. We have some student voice. So we're able to say, okay, let's look for opportunities that meet these interests, right? And that's a great starting point to then build in your supports from your community organizations to see if you can get Billy to the job that he wants. Like, I think that part is so huge, like how you can take a simple questionnaire, make it accessible, and all of a sudden it becomes a very powerful tool in terms of understanding what students are interested in.
And then how are you identifying which students are participating in co-op? Like how are those students being identified as far as, because not all students may come to you with that level of interest. So how are those students being identified for being approached to even participate in a co-op opportunity who have exceptionality?
Yeah, so number one is independence, level of independence. Number two is job readiness skills. So, for example, I can speak to the life skills program, like what we do and what teachers teach is all about building independence, right? And depending on the pathway, so if a student's pathway 4 or 5, so pathway 4 is supported employment and pathway 5 is competitive employment or going to a CICE program. So, or even if a student's a pathway 3-day program, maybe they could eventually work up to becoming or getting into supported employment. Like what the teachers are teaching is those job readiness skills on a daily basis, right? They're teaching functional literacy, numeracy, they're teaching employability skills, and they're teaching social skills. Again, those are definitely linked to the job. So number one is level of independence. And then based on the teacher's assessment, right, of their curriculum, which is very much geared towards building employability skills. So that way they can function well and work well in a working environment. And then for students with other exceptional, like if they're not in our life skills program, those students, it's based on if they're interested. They have to sign up for the co-op program.
But would they be notified that that was an option to be signing up for a co-op program? What if they're not aware of it? Are they being informed of that? Do you know?
Yeah, so that's part of the GLE. So that's why I want to get involved with like developing units in the GLE program to kind of speaks to the opportunities available in co-op, right? Kind of giving them an opportunity to get out into community and see, oh, there's learning to be done outside of the building, hands-on learning. So then again, the idea is they'll be more likely to participate in a co-op program. And then they would have access to the co-op program. In terms of knowledge of the co-op program, it would be similar to everyone. It's an option on their timetable. Selections for grade 11.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is part of course selection. So when they're looking at all the courses available for grade 11, it is one of the courses that they can select in My Blueprint.
In addition, we're starting to implement in the transition to high school. So from grade 8 to grade 9, it'll be captured in our IEPs, part of that transition plan, so that we can put that on the radar right out of elementary school and prepare, like have a scaffolding so that by the time they get to grade 11, if they're indicating an interest or, want to encourage, that we have some supports already in place and kind of in parallel with the work that's being done in the GLE.
I think that's super important to start that early. And sorry, and just one more question. Does anybody have any? I just have another question. So sorry, another question is, when we talked about independence and capacity building and all that kind of thing, what are we looking to also look at the role that EAs will play in that? And how will that work? And is that something you're pushing back to the ministry? Like, how is that? Because that's a huge component of this, I think, in order to be able to support students successfully with possible other identifications, in order for them to participate in this program.
So kind of like what would our plan be to incorporate EA support or to refine the support that's already being offered?
Well, I think it would be probably twofold, and I see Cassandra, but I think probably twofold. I think it would be, one is, do you have the capacity to increase that type of support? If you're going to increase opportunities, and if you're going to increase the availability for students to participate in these co-op opportunities that may require EA support, we're going to need to have the capacity in our schools. Because if you have a student that's going off to co-op, they're taking an EA with them. So that's going to leave you sort of, in a situation at school. So just wondering how that comes into play when we're taking a look at those resources. And again, is that something to feed back to the ministry about? If you're going to increase this program, you're going to need to possibly look at increased funding for specific EAs for co-op opportunities as well to assist students.
Yeah. I think I'd like to answer that question would be, we're not opening up, we're not trying to get more co-op placements without building the skills required to be successful in those co-op placements, right? So like ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to like develop the program in order to develop those employability skills, right? Those job skills for students. Then once they're there and okay, like co-op is something that I'm interested in, that's where that questionnaire would come in to say, okay, what does work need to have in order for it to be interesting and meaningful to you? Then we would tailor that as best we could, like co-op placement tailored as best we could to the interests of the student. In terms of like, let's say students that are going out to a community-based co-op that require EA support, so there's parts of me that are like, yeah, like, oh yeah, of course, but there's realities that we're working within, right? So ultimately it's like refining the support that students receive when they're in the co-op placement. So one of the ideas would be, again, like when I'm communicating with some of the skills trainers that we have at Project Surge, like leveraging those connections and some of the things that we can learn from them, right? In terms of like then bringing that back to our team, looking at our IEAs, talking to our EA managers, looking at our IEAs in terms of like, here's some of the information that we have. How could we use some of the information to kind of refine the EA support that we currently have to maximize what we currently have, right? And then that's kind of where right now what we do is like we have, an EA that goes out with a small group of students and they go to a co-op placement. That EA is facilitating that, facilitating some of that support. But again, those students are going out to those co-op placements because they've got a high level of independence already, right? So, and I'm talking about the life skills program. In terms of other students going out into co-op, I think predominantly our EA support is focused in on students that are in our life skills program that are going out to community-based co-op. Part of the opportunity that we have with the in-school co-op too is that we're able to have an EA support a student in an in-school co-op, which then gives us another opportunity to refine the support that's being provided in that in-school co-op. So again, it's like fine-tuning what we already have to make sure that we maximize what we already have. And then of course, as we're working hard if, we're able to have more EA support, but again, use it efficiently, then of course we would be open to that. However, where we're at right now is like we need to do the best with what we have, and look for those efficiencies and look to maximize the support that we have.
Brenda, I can just add one other thing that we did last year actually is we revamped our secondary independence rubrics slightly as well in terms of this exact piece. So we realized that students who were our placement 5 students, so students who are remaining in that placement 5 can be grouped a little more versus our students who might be placement 4 or students who are credit earning and in classes. So they actually have a more heavily weighted for those students in terms of generating some support, because we know that they may need more support to go out than a student who's remaining in the classroom. So we did adjust our independence rubric last year to better reflect some of the support that might be needed. And actually this year we're working on some additional layers around that, around real transparency, even around adding support to schools who have various different scenarios, but students accessing external co-op is actually one of the considerations when we're adding EA support to a school. And we're actually working with research right now on developing that kind of school piece. So we're in the process of trying to capture some of that support that might be required.
And I think as we wait for some of the details around like the tech credits, we know that we are going to need to, and that'll open up the world to the trades. So there's going to be some opportunity there as well to really build on what we already are doing. It's never going to feel like it's enough, but I really do believe, leading in many ways in this area, and really fortunate to have your leadership and expertise supporting it. And we thought it was important to bring it to this table to, again, ask those tough questions so that we can incorporate, how we respond in our going forward, and sharing it with the ministry, because there will be a ministry report at the end, of course, to follow the money. So that'll be a big component of what we do, and hope it breathes more life to some additional roles like this in the future.
It's a great program. I think it's wonderful that we have had the funding to be able to do this, and to build capacity in this area, I think is really, really important. It's something that we've been talking about for a number of years at this board, and the ability to open up our co-op. We've seen the success with Project Search. I know that, it's something that, again, we'd like to see. We can build some capacity. So I think it's great. And I'd love if you can come back and sort of update us on some things, and, certainly take advantage of the fact that I think there's a number of organizations around this table who probably have connections with other organizations and community partners that they may be able to, make some introductions to or assist with, because I know that within a number of these organizations that we represent here, we have some of those community partnerships for some of the things we're talking about here, employment and future opportunities. So for sure, tap into SEAC if you need some extra help or some input. We'd be happy to assist where we can.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give kudos as well to, we were able to, because of your support, have, leveraging some of the technology that we have. So those 360 cameras. So now I'm kind of going out as part of my, journey around the HCDSB, just, dropping off the 360 cameras. Providing some capacity building around the use of those too. So that would be another way to meet some of the needs. So like if, for example, if students require like repetition of some of the job tasks that they're required to do in a job, well, now they have access to a how-to video. It could be like in a VR headset, like very immersive, or it could just be on a tablet where they're able to go through the steps. So again, that's how we, again, with your support, have been able to build that in, so that way we can provide added repetition for those students who require it. So thank you for that.
Great news. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. Like I said, you come back anytime with updates. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. So the minutes of the November 27th, 2023 SEAC meeting. There will have been copies of the minutes in your meeting package. Did anybody have any questions about that? Okay, if I could get someone to move the minutes for the November 27th meeting. So moved by, I'll take the sure. Is that how I move? Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. And seconded by Rick. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to item number 5, which is business arising from previous meetings. Was there any questions at all on that chart? Maria?
Yeah, I just, in the last schedule for the last meeting, there was, and it had been on there for a little while, for a code of conduct committee. And I know I asked about it at the last meeting. I thought we were going to get some information on that, but I don't see it on the schedule anymore. So I'm just wondering what's happening with that.
Did we send out invites to participate in that?
Yeah, I think you actually. For the code of conduct?
To people to participate on the committee.
Okay, I'll check my email. I don't recall. I saw something about the parent engagement, but not code of conduct.
Okay, so that's a simple fix. We can just send it. Thank you very much, Margaret. We only had 2 weeks between meetings, so we can go ahead and send that out and engage some interest on who'd like to participate in that. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so item number 6, which is policy review. So policy number II-12, management of aggressive student behaviors within our schools. Updates, over to you.
I'll give it a second. Do you have the?
Sorry.
Yep. So we are tasked this year with updating policy number II-12. Wanted to build on the leadership, recognizing a need to support students in our care that require immediate support due to behaviors that pose imminent risk either to themselves or to others, which may be in addition to a student's indicator response plan, if applicable. Sorry, I don't know if you're able to show, you have the red line?
Hang on.
Okay. This is what it looks like now.
It looks like in PDF
In
form.
PDF.
It doesn't show up, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yep, hold on. Yeah.
That's okay. So I'll just speak to some of the additions, which you'll notice we did consider the title.
Find it while you're-
Sure.
Yeah.
We wanted to, I'll pull up mine over here, change the title to reflect what we think more accurately describes the situation, which is management of student behaviors. Is putting the emphasis on the aggressive student behaviors component. In addition, really the major change was to ensure that we're embedding an equity lens by the inclusion of language that reflects both our ministry and school board commitments. So you'll see there's a few additions where it indicates Halton Catholic District School Board is committed to addressing any discriminatory practices in alignment with Catholic social teachings, the Ontario Human Rights Code, and HCDSB's equity and inclusion education policy. Also wanted to include components that refer to code protected rights. And we also wanted to address disproportionality. We know that some students that are racialized in particular have faced barriers in the past, and there's data that suggests that sometimes students who are racialized are seen as more aggressive than others, numerous studies. So we wanted to recognize that as part of our educator bias, and we wanted to address that in this policy. So those are the major, I mean, that's pretty heavy, but those were the major additions. We are, compliant as far as any relevant and current references. We did include the Human Rights Code and wanted to make sure, like I said, that we were just updating in the red line version. You'll see that the updates really are to include that equity piece to make sure that we are responsive. So your role is to take a look at these edits and then provide some suggestions. I think last time we met 2 weeks ago, we were on the agenda for tomorrow's policy meeting, but didn't give enough time to provide some feedback. So Emmy Bakaich through that office was able to give us the first one when we come back in January, which is January 9th, but at least it gives us some time these next few days before we really ramp into the holiday spirit to take a look at some of these red line edits and then provide some feedback, I believe, through you, and then you summarize or however, and we want to make sure that we capture those ideas or those suggestions as part of our policy that we will bring to the policy board meeting in January. So
we can do is we can take a couple of questions if people want clarification or have questions about the policy as it is. And then after that, yeah, happy to, is it hurting your head?
It's hurting my head
Yeah.
every time I nod.
Yeah. I know, well, I'm jingling too. So we can certainly have a bit of a discussion about it, and then I can do similar to what I did for the volunteer in school policy. If people want to send it, I will compile the feedback and then send it forward to the policy chair and a copy to all a SEAC. So is there any questions or comments at all on this policy clarification? Yep, Maria?
Sorry, not on the policy, and I apologize if I missed something, but do we have this redlined version? Have we, SEAC members, received it?
So you can actually see the red line and you'll know on the so you have the original policy that we sent last time and then on that.
Okay, so I have the original from our last meeting, but I haven't received anything since, so I don't know if, okay. I wasn't sure if it's my email. Okay.
So we'll, so we'll send out the red line version. Thank you for that, Margaret. And then thank you for moving that. So that should give people, hopefully some ample time. And if you have questions, please feel free to email. Once that goes out, once you've had a chance to review, in the absence of us having another meeting before policy, right, then please just email the questions and happy to get responses or clarifications or anything as required. Yeah, please go ahead.
I do have a quick question just for my own understanding. So the original red line changes, which the ones you mentioned sounded very appropriate and I'm looking forward to reading them, but who decided those original ones? Was it individual person or was it a group committee?
Yeah, it was a committee. There's a policy working group, and then within the department had feedback from a number of staff members. Actually, Andrea Jones, who's the EA manager, she was one of the contributing voices. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that we did have conversations with Human Rights and Equity as well. So it was a multi-departmental collaboration. Interestingly enough, because I think when it first came out, it was primarily like an EA focused policy. But as we have recognized the need and our responsibility and recognizing again some of those components where educator bias might be playing into it, it's grown out of that as well. So there's a lot of interest, rightfully so. And then I think 2 weeks ago I did mention like we're dealing with students whose behavior is communicating something to us, and we want to be able to respond so that they're safe, but also to make sure that their dignity and their well-being is our number one priority as well. So it's a tricky one, and yeah. So I'll leave it at that. And
I am glad to see the aggressive piece. I think, yeah, right. So I'm glad to see that language is taken out. But okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that. So moving on to item number 7, which is action and information items. We do have an update from ABC. So Jessica, over to you.
Thank you. So as we shared through the agenda package, at the November 26th AGM for ABC and SEAC representative meeting, we had the honor of hearing from Dr. Joy Lawson. She shares some challenging traits of gifted learners, reasons why schools and educators are often not prepared, equity strategies that could work, and using an equity lens to advocate for changes. So some of the key recommendations she did mention were early identification practice free from bias, and multiple criteria protocols, empowering parents and students, and trained and empathetic educators, access to appropriate programming and services, and cohorting opportunities with their intellectual peers. And over the past few years with the former superintendents, I think ABC's had conversations where continuously improving based on the recommendations, but we would welcome further conversations together to continue to improve. Maria, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you summed it up well there. And I guess the only thing I would say, because I know Jessica, you attended virtually, I was in the room. I mean, Dr. Joy was virtual, but the rest, some of us were in the room, and there was a lot of head nodding. So she's in the United States, but a lot of these are global you know, we share these issues globally. So it definitely resonated very much with our members. So that's all I would add right now.
Was there any questions at all on the report? And thank you for bringing that, because I like to see updates and reports from committees. So just a reminder for anyone, if you want to do that, please do that. So thank you for putting that in. It always lets us have a chance for conversation and sharing. Moving on to item number 8, which is communication to SEAC. So we have the superintendent report. So over to Superintendent Jack Caldera.
Thank you. I'm going to move my introductory remarks to the end. But I wanted to highlight a few information pieces. So the extended French online registration opened December 1st and closes on Friday, December the 15th. And we definitely wanted students of all, capabilities and diverse needs to, if they're interested in the French, to have access. And we're really pushing equity of access to all of our regional programs. So I'm highlighting it for anyone's reference. And there's some links there to help with accessing the registration. We've also been doing some full day kindergarten open houses, some kindergarten open houses. We did complete 4 of them. There's some more information that I'll share when I get to the speech and language, but they were met with success. They were all very well attended, and it's kind of an opportunity to solicit some of our students that were born in 2020. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? So those students are now school age, and we want them. Now we want them to come to our schools. So we've been really met with some success in sharing what our Halton Catholic District School Boards offer. I read my notes around the policy number to support I-12 to support that conversation. So I'll skip over that component, and I've included what I referenced today in my report. So you'll have that to refer to when you get the minutes. I wanted to also include the HTAC, which is the Halton Transition Advisory Committee Info Night. It does happen January 24th and 25th, and it really is a program that supports Halton families with transitioning from secondary school to beyond. So there's a theme for tonight around not only the co-op, but then beyond. And that's directly through HTAC, but we obviously take a great interest in that because we share those students, and knowing what that information is like allows us to share broadly about what's happening to our families. We already heard our presentation from Andrew. As far as living our faith, this month we are practicing the virtue of patience, being in the season of Advent, and just wanted to again remind everyone about the sensory-friendly Mass. I believe that it will be updated with some options over the Christmas services that will reflect over the Christmas holiday, the season. So please continue to look at the website. So we've included that for everyone's reference. And then we received some information from the Rick Hansen Foundation, which is offering inclusion and accessibility e-learning, online professional development for educators. The course is around 4 hours to complete, so it is a time commitment, but through those courses, we're hoping that people will walk away understanding the diversity of experience within the physical disability community and the impact of accessibility and inclusion for youth with disabilities. So this will just build capacity in our system. Learning about the use of inclusive language and best practices in communication, recognizing and reducing physical and attitudinal barriers, and also to explore equitable practices, advocacy, and allyship. So that information I actually took from that same link, the website, and it's free, but it does have a limit of 500 participants. So hopefully we'll get a good uptake. But as soon as I received this information, I shared it out. So wanted to just let everyone know about that as well. I have some updates from our EA managers. So November 24th was our EAPA day. The EAs attended 4 workshops throughout the day. They were presented by in-house partners as well as Erin Oaks and our OT and PT partners. The presentations were delivered by our IEAs, our BAs, our SLPs and CDAs, ICERTs, So many acronyms: health and safety officers, human rights and equity office, as well as our social work office and ICYCs. So they were well supported. This is a group that works really hard with some of our most fragile and complex students. And so just having the opportunity to build capacity with and from one another was a great opportunity. They also, under the leadership of both Andrea Jones and Simone, it was just a great day. So very thankful for that opportunity, and stay tuned for the February PA Day. The ball's already moving for 2024 PA Days. And then there was some safe management training, increasing the trainers from 7 to 13 as of October 1st. There's a training schedule to address both remaining backlog from COVID-19 restrictions and onboarding future requirements for new hires. So that's great, because that safe management piece kind of ties into our earlier conversation around students who are in distress. So it's really important that we have that training, and really fortunate to have the ability to do that in-house. So from speech and language, we have some speech and language services that participated in the kindergarten open houses, providing both information around preschool and school age services, communication milestones, and strategies to support language development for those who attended. And the SBRS's OTs provided a virtual presentation on self-regulation in the classroom, and that was attended by 50 staff. And this concludes the series of professional development sessions by the OTs. And the Blind Low Vision team created a storybox kits for students with cortical visual impairment related to the 5 senses of Christmas. And there's a sample there for your reference. And almost done. Psychology. The psychology staff participated together with the ICYC, social worker, and educators in the first activation of our relaunched multidisciplinary team process, which is supporting mental health and well-being student needs. So this is a big team that comes together, and they do a lot of really great work. Actually, Oliver's here today. And psychology also presented referral to identification PD for new certs. And last time we were here, we had a really comprehensive presentation for mental health and the CYC department. So hopefully that will tide you over until January for updates in the new year. And of course, our coordinator, who's been on the job exactly 2 weeks today, presented 2 days at the new teacher induction program, which we refer to as NTIP, to provide an overview of special education at Halton Catholic District School Board. And our special education consultants also attended virtual OACC symposium, where they heard from the Ministry of Education on the SIP and SIA process, and had a family of schools meeting where CERTs received presentations on transition supports and kindergarten supports. Father Wilson Andrade also spoke to our CERTs with a heartfelt Christmas message. So that concludes my report, and I'm going to go back to my introductory remarks, because I wanted to wish everyone a very blessed Advent as we approach Christmas. Looking forward to 2024. Can't believe that. And you may have noticed that Director Klein is not here this evening, and I just ask that you keep his family in your thoughts and prayers as they experienced a loss over the weekend, and he sends his regrets tonight. So I'll end on that note, but I don't know if there are any questions.
Is there any question?
Actually, what's today, Monday? Wednesday, we have a meeting. Can't even speak, elementary and secondary principals meeting.
Great.
So I'll share it with them then.
Okay.
And ask them to share it to their communities. We still have a bit of time because it's not till the end of January, but definitely want to get it out and get it out often, because it's a great resource for those grade 12s.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah,
For those leaving, yeah.
Yeah, if there was a way for the CERTs to communicate that to families, that'd be great. Just
I'll
so they're
include
aware
it,
of it.
and then, yeah.
Great.
And Jen can also do this.
Thank you.
The same, add it to the to-do list.
Thank you. I just, the more information we can, and sometimes like we know that parents don't always, unless they're connected with a community organization, like some of the ones around the table, they don't they don't have access to this information. They're not always being told this by service navigators. Sometimes their kids are no longer being seen at places like Erin Oak or other centers. So they have no way to access this information unless it's coming from one of the school teams. So that would be wonderful if you wouldn't mind doing that. That'd be great. Is there any other questions on the report? Trish?
I just have a quick question about when you mentioned about the backlog to address the remaining backlog from COVID-19 restrictions. How, I know you've updated, or yes, our previous superintendent updated us before, but how far back are we, or where are we at, would you say, with our current? Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I could speak to a little bit historic. I haven't run the data most recently, but we did do kind of an overarching look at the start of the school year to see what we were looking at. We did increase our trainers as of October 1st, so we're only right in the process of being able to access their expertise into our schedule. So we were still a little bit slow from that perspective. But we are still looking at, when combined between the COVID restrictions that set us back a little bit because we couldn't do any physical training for that period, as well as a combination of our onboarding and recruiting, which is ongoing. At the start of the school year, we were looking at about between 80 and 90 staff. That included supply staff that had not completed the 2-day training. So we were in the process of trying to get that up to speed. We have moved to regular scheduled training that started sometime in October. Again, don't hold me to that. And it runs till March at the moment because we were looking at what space was available. So we do have training now that runs every 2 weeks to trying to make sure that we've cleared that by the time we're moving into the spring. Are there any other specifics that would be helpful?
No, sorry, where my brain is going is I was just wondering, I'm without getting into the minutia, but I'm going to just assume you don't pair up. Like you would pair up somebody experienced with somebody that is not if they haven't done the training, right? Okay. Sorry.
You mean from an EA perspective,
Yeah,
or from
yeah.
So
Like
if EA staff that are not trained are not engaging in those specific tasks. So if they're not trained, they cannot physically interact with the student in order to address imminent risk. There is a lot that the student may need that an EA can participate in, lots of prevention, lots of programming, lots of redirection. But if there is a requirement for any physical interaction or the potential of that, they would call for backup. We don't use non-trained staff to engage in that type of need.
I thought so. I just wanted to, thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just something that I've been wondering since reading through the policy actually is with the EA training for that, how often do EAs take this training, or is it a once and done kind of training?
Can I answer? So onboarding is a 2-day, 12-hour training to start, and then we do a 6-hour training every 2 years. The model, though, also includes on-site support from trainers. So we do a weekly practice session to ensure that there's a retention of the skill that is required that includes both physical and preventative strategies that's embedded in the training. And as needed, that it's included in our SC17 review and all of those pieces, our trainers are providing ongoing support on site where it's student specific when those interventions are required. So we try to stay as aware as possible of any kind of circumstances that might require more support. So if those needs are not, we're not aware of them, it's a 2-year cycle of research, but we do provide a fair amount of on-site direct support to ensure that we're maintaining the skill set and can increase the schedule of training if needed for an EA specific need or a student specific need or anything that might come up.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Is that it for questions? Great. Thank you for the report. Trish, for the trustee report.
Well, I like following Superintendent Jack Caldero because there's not a whole lot. And we only had one meeting since our last we've had one board meeting since our last SEAC meeting. So really, I just wanted to highlight that on December 5th, our board met. We had a presentation by 16 finalists for Keeping Christ in Christmas. I was going to say promo, but I guess it's our contest that is done every year. And I should have had those facts. There were some really good facts about how many years. I think we've been doing it 10 years.
Over 5,000 entries over
5,000
10
entries.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I'm sure I can get that information.
I know, and how much, how many people it's reached, I thought was really cool. Like even just our Christmas cards that they do. And anyway, sometimes we have a presentation by them. We don't this year, right? That wouldn't be. Did we have a presentation by the finalists last year? Am I imagining that? Never mind. Okay. It's been a long December already. So, and also our equity audit came out last week, and we had a presentation by our human rights and equity team. And it was an in-depth audit done by an independent, third-party independent company, Koski-Minsky, and they did an anti-Black racism report as well as the equity audit, and we can find that on our website. And I was going to ask Margaret if you wouldn't mind sharing that link at the end. It's just if you have a need for heavy reading, don't do it at night. It's very heavy, but it's really worth reviewing. That's what I just encourage you. So that's all. Thanks.
Is there any questions at all for Trish on the trustee report? No? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving along, where am I? Item number 9, which is SEAC discussion. Questions? Do we have anything for SEAC discussion? Yeah, Andrea, go ahead.
So I just have a question, just it triggered my memory about the French program. I had done a survey a while back about like a school of the arts concept for the school board, and I wasn't sure whatever happened with that, because I thought that that's something really great for a lot of the kids that are, more creative, a bit different, and I wasn't sure whatever happened with that. I don't think I ever saw an update, or maybe I missed it. Would you have an update on that?
So I know for my understanding at the beginning of the year, there was some information gathered around the regional arts program, but I think the first wave of it was actually before that with the sports program. So we do have a launching of a new regional sports program that's happening in September of 2024. And I know that there's still, I don't believe that there's been any release as far as the regional arts program. So you haven't missed anything, but I know that there was some data that was collected, and I don't know that we were quite right at that point where that program is being launched. I don't know if there's anyone else who had additional information.
Yeah, I just, because I was helping with the sports. The arts, there was more data collected, and they wanted to expand on that, and so some information came up. So they're trying to not reorganize it, but they're gathering more information. So it won't be, the sports kind of took off, and just because they had the facility there, but the arts, they're trying to, I guess there's more to it. So it's a bit more delayed.
Okay, so I just have another follow-up question. And with the sports program, is that meant like the best of the best kids that are only really good at sport that can participate, or is it meant for like recreational sports for everybody? Like, what's that look like?
It's a multi-layered program. So we do have those who might be already involved or attached to some sports and require a program that's really flexible for the education commitment, obviously, but then allows them to also participate in their sport to a high level. We also know that there are some students who just have an aptitude or an interest in the sport. So very fortunate that when we did have that conversation, maybe we can invite curriculum to kind of speak to it. I don't know if Jeff Kroll's ears are burning, but just as you had mentioned, like we do have some students who have an interest, and maybe they're not going to make Team Canada, but they're really interested in the sports program, and that's what engages and gets them into the school building. So I know that there's different layers to the program and the offerings. I believe it's really centered right now. It's not offered at every high school currently, but I think that it will, the intent is that it will expand. there's some descriptors. I'm not doing it justice. I know I'm not doing it justice, but I know that there's different layers and opportunities. So I'm happy to take that question back and come back with more detail, or I might even invite curriculum to come and share a little bit more, and they will do a much better job of explaining it. Yeah.
Great idea. Then they could also probably answer some questions on where we're sitting on some of the other arts program stuff. But we could also, Andrea, there was a presentation at the board table about the sports program specifically. So we could find a link for you for that meeting. And you can just, there was some good questions asked. There was a lot of information given about the sports program. We asked some of those things about, the types of athletes, elite, from elite athletes to other individuals who would be interested in it. And what, again, as Cassandra was saying, like what's motivating them to get in school. And then we talked about supports for students who may require EA supports or other supports in order to participate. So we can, in the meantime, send a link to that board meeting so you can watch the presentation at a minimum. And then we can talk to curriculum about coming in to talk about those programs. It's a great question. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to follow up too, that it is fully accessible. It's at St. Francis Xavier, the venue, and the support is there. So any EA's IEP, that was something that kind of kept asking and bringing in Superintendent Jack out there when needed. So it is fully accessible and inclusive.
It's a great question. Thanks, Andrea. Was there any other questions for SEAC discussion at all? Okay, so moving on to meeting summary and next steps. So got a couple of things. So we'll send out an email about the Code of Conduct Committee to get that going and to find out who's interested in that. The red line version of the policy, to go out the link to the board meeting that talked about the sports program. And yeah, the audit. Sorry, I'm adding to your list here, Margaret, the audit. I think that was it. Okay. And so our next meeting is Monday, January the 29th, 2024, which is kind of crazy that we're already there. And much thanks to Margaret and Superintendent Jack Caldera for the little gifts that we have on our table this evening. Just a little token. So thank you so much for that as we send everybody off into celebrating Christmas and hoping everyone has a wonderful, safe holiday with friends and family. And that's that. So do we have any resolution for absentees this evening? Did we receive any regrets? Okay, so if I could get a resolution for absentees received, if anybody could move that, Trish? And seconded? Amanda, thanks. Okay, and moving to the adjournment. So motion to adjourn. Tracy, thank you. Okay, I got Rick and Tracy. That's okay. I got Rick and Tracy. Okay, we're good. Thank you very much to both of you. And if you will join me in the sign of our faith for our closing prayer, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.